but we had him scheduled earlier on in the year, but they didn't work out for him. And,
I'll get it.
this is the this is the our exam week, and a very bleak day, and so on. So I apologize to him, and I hope that perhaps next year, if he's of a mind, we can reschedule him at a more propitious time. But you're here, and we are going to hear a talk about on lessons learned by a novice lexicographer in creating an e-dictionary for the Episcopal Church. And I want to introduce Trevor to you. He is the information management specialist in the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. He came to Wayne in 2002 on a 6-month grant, and liked it so much he never left. He is a webmaster for a class and assists faculty and staff in the college with their information management needs. I'm very, very grateful to him as a director of the Humanities Center, because he has helped us with making sure that our events are in the right place, and anytime I have an IT question, I can ask him, and there's always a prompt response. So I'm very, very thankful to him. And he has been following the Humanities Center's work to such an extent that he signed up for a brown bag talk. He has an undergraduate degree in business from Brock University, a master's of libraries and information science from the University of Western Ontario, and an education specialist certificate in information technology from Wayne here. He's also an ABD that is all but dissertation in library and information sciences, and is currently completing a graduate certificate in theological studies at the Ecumenical Theology Seminary here in Detroit. While completing his undergraduate degree, he was a research assistant and then director of the Brock University Small Business Consulting Center. And you'll see that this is a very, very varied man with expertise in a large number of areas. For example, he taught courses in indexing, web design, computer technology, online searching, database management, research methods, and statistics. And his research interests include how people organize information and how they search for it, the real presence of Jesus in the Eucharist, and the impact of the Continental Reformation on the English Reformation. He has been published in the Encyclopedia of Library and Information Sciences, CD-ROM Professional, and Computers in Libraries, and also in Epilogue. He is a former editorial board member of the Canadian CD-ROM Journal, and in 1993, he won the prize for the best student presentation at the Canadian Association for Information Sciences Conference. He's been a member of the Cathedral Church of St. Paul, Detroit since 2002, and I was a member of that church for many years and served on the vestry, so I know it's an extremely lively congregation. From 2005 to 2011, he helped with their website, and in 2012, he produced a web-based searchable database for the new Episcopal calendar of saints from the book Holy Women, Holy Men. He has a website dedicated to providing material about the Episcopal Church, and recently started creating web-based crossword puzzles based on the Sunday scripture readings. He's married to his wonderful wife, Josie. That happened in 2009, and they reside in Midtown, Detroit, with their dog, Oscar. So there you have a brief overview of this very talented scholar So please welcome Trevor Richards to the podium.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. We're a small group, which is good, so if there's questions along the way, feel free to interrupt, and we'll see if we can answer them. The title of my talk is Lessons Learned by a Novice Lexicographer in Creating an E-Dictionary for the Episcopal Church. A brief agenda. I'm going to start with a few definitions. We're talking about a dictionary, so that seems appropriate. Give you an overview of the project and steps in building the e-dictionary and lessons learned so far. So, we all use the term dictionary, and we've all seen the very big ones, like this one that my wife and I use when we play Scrabble, to the very small ones that you carry around as an undergraduate student in your briefcase or your pocket, to subject specialist ones dealing with theology, or medicine, or law. And all of those are dictionaries. A dictionary technically is a reference source in print or electronic form containing words alphabetically arranged with information about their forms, pronunciations, functions, etymologies, or word origins, meanings, and syntactic and idiomatic uses. That's the most common dictionary we have. We also have reference books listing alphabetical terms or names important to a particular subject or activity, along with discussions of their meanings and applications. And that's what I'm building, is that kind of dictionary for a particular subject or activity. We also have reference books listing alphabetically words of one language, showing their meanings and translations in another language. So, English-French dictionaries, English-Spanish, English-Klingon, that actually does exist. I gave it to a friend who was going to work in Ottawa and needed to be bilingual. I'm not sure what he thought of that. And these definitions actually come from Merriam-Webster, one of the very first dictionaries in the United States by Noah Webster. A lexicographer is an author or editor of a dictionary. The origin comes out of Greek, lexigraphos, meaning lexicon or dictionary, and graphos, writer, to write. The word's been around for a fairly long period of time. This is the kind of thing you'd often see in a traditional dictionary. What is the definition? Where does it come from? When did it start being used? Novice, a person who's just started learning or doing something, or a new member of a religious group who is preparing to become a nun or monk. In this instance, I'm the first. Being married, it would be difficult to be a monk, but there are married monks in the Anglican tradition, and married nuns as well. Episcopal Church, officially, I don't know if they're still using this, but it used to be the Protestant Episcopal Church in the United States of America. I think it's now just the Episcopal Church in the United States of America. I think they've dropped the word Protestant, and a couple of people are nodding. So, the official branch of the Anglican Church in the United States, founded after what I call the unfortunate rebellion against His Majesty King James III, being from Canada, and a subject of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, defender of the faith, Queen of England, Canada, etc., etc., etc. You know it as the American Revolution, which you might not see as being unfortunate. All right. So, I'm a novice lexicographer attempted to create an e-dictionary for the Episcopal Church. The e-dictionary is going to consist of a free e-book using the standard format EPUB, which is used by all the major e-readers, though some of them have proprietary versions. Entries will have a pronunciation guide, cross-references and images, and we're also going to have a website with a searchable database by keyword or by selecting from a subject list, images, videos, audio pronunciations. So I'm going to have somebody actually sit down and pronounce every entry in the dictionary and record them. And a hard copy book printed upon demand. There's several self-publishing services out there, Lulu, Amazon, etc., that are reasonably easy to use. My wife has self-published a few books that way. Audience, pretty broad. New members of the Episcopal Church looking for, what did the priest say he was going to make me wear? And what is that term? Existing members, non-Episcopalians looking for information about the church, members of other Anglican churches, age range, young adults and adults. Probably people teenage and above, although there are some very bright 10-year-olds who might be interested in reading this. I think we actually missed one slide. We also had a slide in there talking about what is a dictionary and how is it different. An e-dictionary is a dictionary in electronic form. Some of them are available as standalone hardware devices, so you buy an actual little clamshell thing that, oh, it is a dictionary. Those are not as common. Most of them have moved to apps or online versions by now. All right, sorry about that. Why am I doing this? Other than it's interesting. A friend many years ago, back in 2004, he used to teach at Wayne State, has now gone on to be a priest, Richard Serafov, said, I'll meet you at the service, let's meet at the Narthex. And not being one to be afraid to ask questions, I went, where's the Narthex? And really, that's where this project sort of starts. From that, I stopped at the Cathedral bookstore and picked up a couple dictionaries just out of interest that I read cover to cover, just not very long, just out of interest to see some of the terminology. And that's where the project starts. Anybody here, other than clergy and deacons, who know what a Narthex is? We'll come back to that. People, even if they have dictionaries at home on a particular topic, tend not to have them with them. You don't carry everything you've got in your bookshelves at home. So, an electronic dictionary solves this problem. At the time I started this project, there were no electronic versions of the print dictionaries for the Episcopal Church or for other churches in general. A couple of them have come out, but they're basically a copy of the print one on a Kindle. No cross-references, virtually no images, none of the things that make an electronic version useful. Even if you have a print dictionary with you, they don't have pronunciation guides, very few cross-references, and few or no images. So as a librarian and information manager, I'm thinking, we need an electronic version of this that's free of charge, because some of these print dictionaries are $45, which to me is a lot of money. You're not going to go out and buy that just unless you really care to. Even electronic versions, the $45 one, the Kindle version is $25, which I think is still a lot of money. So that's where this project's coming out of. Steps in building the dictionary. The first step in building any dictionary is, what are the words or the terms going to be? Various ways of doing that, sitting down and talking with people, what do you think should be in here? How do you define certain words? Looking at existing dictionaries, existing sources of information. Virtually no dictionary comes out of whole cloth. Noah Webster sat down and looked at, over 26 years, I don't think it was full time, but that's how long it took, and looked at words from different dictionaries and different, in England, the United States, and figured out what to put in it. So that's one of the basic ways of gathering terms. Creating definitions, again, these don't come out of whole cloth. You're typically reading what other people have written and trying to come up with a better one or a more expensive one or a shorter one, depending on your audience. Some dictionary definitions are encyclopedic in nature. This is a reprint of a dictionary from the 1870s to 14th edition. The word cathedral takes 5 pages. The word Advent is 4 pages and 2 columns of small type. This is more on the encyclopedia end of dictionaries. There's a fine line between a dictionary and encyclopedia. Usually speaking, encyclopedias are longer articles written by different people with a subject specialty. Not always. I mean, some dictionaries, the entries might be a page. Most of the time, it's a paragraph or two. Subject ones tend to have longer definitions, but this is fascinating reading, but I don't think mine's going to be quite that lengthy for each definition. Find images of words that you think would be helpful. If you're defining what is a cassock, would a picture be helpful? If you're defining a chalice, would it be nice to have images of various chalices from churches across the Anglican community? Pronunciation guide, and we'll talk about this later. Many traditional dictionaries have those funny characters that sort of help you sound out words called phonetics. I don't remember learning to read, learning phonetics. They don't mean anything to me. They're not helpful, but they're helpful to many people. Shooting the videos. Not every term is going to have a video with it, but there's things that might be useful to have on the website, such as having a clergy person dress. Let me rephrase that. Having a person who's already dressed put on their clergy clothing, so their vestments, the formal word, and holding up each piece and go, this is an odd, this is a cassock, this is a whatever, this is its history, this is its significance. Especially for newcomers to an Anglican church or an Episcopal church, there's a lot of ritual they may not be familiar with. Things like that might be interesting to take. And finally, once all of that's done, actually producing the ebook and the website. Although there's 6 steps here, 2 through 5 sort of occur at the same time. So as I'm writing the definitions, we'll also be getting the images and all at the same time. Gathering the terms. As I've talked about already, acquiring the sources of terms in my case is being done by looking at existing dictionaries in both print and electronic form, and then typing the terms into software, creating subjects for broad categories such as music, architecture, clothing, as I'm reading the dictionaries, and creating cross-references as I go. So for each entry, I'm also typing up what other people have said, but also indicating what cross-references might be interesting. So for the word bishop, the definition may talk about his ring, his hat, the mitre, etc. Those will be words that you can click on and have a cross-reference to those other things. So these are some of the dictionaries I've acquired over time. If people want to look at them afterwards, they're free to do so. The very first one I typed up while my wife was taking poetry classes at a little coffee shop in Ferndale, or somewhere, one of the suburbs, Hamtramck. It all blends together to me. Only 158 entries, 25 images, 70 pages. That didn't take too long. You could read that in an afternoon from cover to cover if you so chose to. The next one I did comes out of the United Kingdom in 1960, 636 entries. This is the only one that actually has a little picture for every entry in it. Very nice and small, easy to read, would be very easy to carry. And in 1960, it was £3.6 something shillings perhaps in British currency before they went decimal. So, and this was by a priest in the Church of England. The next 2 are by the same person. It's interesting that the first one from '85 is called A New Dictionary for Episcopalians. Then the second one he did is just a dictionary for Episcopalians. One would think that should be reversed. Again, 587 entries, a few images, not a lot of pages as well. Pretty easy read. The next 4 I've worked with, one by Howard Harper, another retired priest, 300 entries, no pictures. The next 2 are by the same priest, Reverend Crum. This went for at least 18 editions, 1 a year. A very tiny dictionary from the Trifold Publishing Company, which is no longer in existence. It used to publish things for the Episcopal Church. very small, some advertising to pay for it, some plates. I've only picked up 2 editions of this. I'm hoping to eventually get all of them and maybe contact the archives of the church to find out who was he, what parish was he at, and do they have other copies I can get a hold of, just out of interest, to see how did it evolve over the 20 years of its publication. So I've picked up 2 of his. The very last one is out of the United Kingdom in its 5th edition, now 12 years ago. Was brought back by my priest's family last summer on their trip to England with the choir. 890 entries, so the biggest one I've looked at, probably about 100, 200 entries. It's the only one that's not strictly alphabetical. It's alphabetical at the beginning, but then throughout it, there's all the music words, all the words about clergy, all the words about governance. So it's sort of broken up that if you just want to know, well, I'm going to be in the choir, I need to know all these musical terms, here you go. So all of these I've actually typed up. These 3 I'm just mentioning. The first one on the left I haven't dealt with because it's 511 pages. And I want to get started actually building my own dictionary. I will probably come back to this one at times. This one also has a lot of words I'm not sure I will put in, like birth control, abortion, mercy killing, all things that the church has a stance on. I'm not sure it's within the scope of what I'm trying to do, which is mostly words that would be used in church circles that are not part of the everyday language. So there's some things I might not put in. The next one I've already talked about. The very last one, Dictionary of the Church, published 15 years ago, 3,000 entries, a lot of which are biographical in nature. Famous clergy, bishops, all of the saints, books of the Bible, etc. Almost encyclopedic in nature, from church publishing, the publishing wing of the Episcopal Church. It is finally available as an ebook, but again, there's no cross-referencing, there's no electronic additions to it. It's just turn the page, turn the page, turn the page. I actually haven't bought it because it's $45. It is sort of incorporated into the Episcopal Church USA's website. Under library resources, there's a glossary link, and you can browse it A to Z or search it, but again, without cross-references. So you're reading an entry on Bishop, it doesn't take you to Micah, which I don't know why, but maybe one day it will. So, before I started typing all of this, I needed to figure out what software package I'm going to put this into. I talked to some of the linguistics faculty, did a little bit of research about various packages, and somebody uses shareware. If people are interested in this, I can email this to you. My email is just Trevor@Wayne. I also looked at traditional database software, Microsoft Access FileMaker, or doing a SQL database on mainframes on a server. At this stage, I wasn't creating definitions yet. I was just gathering the dictionaries and typing their contents. So I would have all the definitions of a given word on one piece of paper, as opposed to having 6 dictionaries on a table and looking at each one. This one, I can work on this from anywhere. I don't have to take the physical dictionaries with me. So at the point I was at, the other software would have been overkill. Some of it was expensive. Right now, I've done all my work in a program called FileMaker 6. I thought about doing it in Access, but FileMaker, you create the data structure, your table structure, you've got your data entry form, you've got your search form. You don't have to do anything else. Quick and easy. You can also do it as an Access. Now that I'm about to start writing all the definitions, I'm going to go back and look up all of those lexical software packages. Many of them have trial versions I'll download and try out. I need to be able to have something that will allow me to have multiple editors and to export all of this into something else, to get it to the web and into Word, to get it to EPUB. So I scanned all of these dictionaries as a PDF file. So I basically set up my scanner and just went scan page, turn the page, scan. And then I could have on the screen the PDF and the FileMaker database and just type. I thought about OCRing the text, or doing optical character recognition, which is when you scan it and try and have the computer read the text and turn it into characters you can edit. I've done that for projects before. My master's or library science degree, we scanned a few hundred journal articles for an automatic indexing project. The trouble is, unless you have very good quality originals that are at least 14 point or better, the OCR is probably 95% accurate, maybe 98, which means you've got to do an awful lot of editing. And I thought of trying that, and I decided several of these are not large enough. I'm going to have to photocopy and blow them up to really OCR them, and I thought it would just be easier to type them. I also thought of hiring people to do the typing for me. Might have been faster, and expensive, and I thought it better for me to really know what the other definitions were. Typing them gets it into your memory. So I typed each word into the database. If it already existed, I just modified the record and added the next definition. Each record has an entry, the definitions, a basic subject and cross-references. I didn't do this full time, and I would start and stop. So the first word was typed in January 21st, 2012, according to the date created field in the database, and the last word was typed yesterday. So 1,700 unique terms. So in terms of comprehensiveness, this is probably twice as big as the Basic Church Dictionary. I just love this cover. A, B, C, D, the Basic Church Dictionary. Was sort of cute. Smaller than the one put up by Church Publishing because I'm not putting in a lot of biographical entries. So I wrote my first definition this morning. Assuming I can define 10 words a day, it will take about 7 months to do all of that, assuming I did it every day, which of course is, there's always going to be days you don't do anything on it. I'm going to need a volunteer or two to be subject matter specialist. So I'm going to need somebody to review the music section, somebody to review the architectural section and go, do I really need to put in capital and all the other pieces of Gothic churches, or is that overkill? I mean, where do we draw the line? So I'm going to need a couple of clergy persons, a choir master, an editor / proofreader. I'm not the best typist in the world, so there's lots of typos in this thing. I haven't spell checked it yet. I have to finalize a choice of a software package. Something else I've been struggling with, and I'm going to have to talk with people about this and get a feel for it, is word order. Many dictionaries do things such as cross, Greek, cross, pictorial, cross, Orthodox, cross, Latin, so that when you're reading through looking for the word cross, everything's there in the print version. Is that worth doing in the electronic version that's keyword searchable? Because you're going to put in Latin cross and out it comes. But we're also going to be, upon demand, producing a print copy. So that's something I have to talk about with people and say, do we care? Scope. People. Some of these dictionaries have hundreds of people in them, of all the saints, all the popes, all the leaders of the Church of England, the Anglican community. Where do you draw the line? Do you put any of them in? From an Episcopal context, because that's my main focus, probably Hooker, Cranmer, Henry VIII, some of those big ones come to mind, and the American ones, Seabury, etc. Where do you draw? Do you put it on the presiding bishops or heads of the church? So I'm leaning towards less of that at the current time, and 3 or 4 years from now, we can revisit that and searches adding in biographies of people. Do we put in all the people on the Episcopal calendar of saints? It's a book about yay big. Are they all worth putting in? So what's the scope? Still needs a little bit of refining. Theological terms, architectural terms. A couple of these dictionaries are British. There's some words that are uniquely British, like benefice, that don't apply to the American church, but are interesting historically. Is it something that's going to be heard in everyday Episcopal Church folk talk? Is it worth putting in? So that will be something to be decided. Origin. Am I going to bother putting in this came out of Latin, Greek, Old French, Modern French, etc.? I think that actually might be interesting and make it a searchable field. So if somebody wants to pull out all the words that came out of Latin, just out of interest, here you go. Cross-references and subjects we've talked about already. So this is what this actually is going to involve. And we come back to NERFX. One of the definitions, a vestibule stretching across the western end of some churches, especially Gothic, separated from the nave by a wall, screen, or railing, and very often under a gallery. So you would need to know what is Gothic, what is a nave, what is a screen, a railing, and a gallery to really understand that. Also, a vestibule, usually a wide one across the front, west end of a church, separate from the nave. Harper's dictionary is interesting in that he is very folksy. A Greek word brought over into English without change. The narthex in a church building is an empty room between the front door and the nave. It is the foyer-like space that is often called the vestibule. Of course, it is a vestibule, but narthex is the right word for it when it is a church. Depending on the size and grandeur of the building itself, the narthex may be big and imposing, a small and merely utilitarian. And many churches don't narthex at all. Very folksy, very informal style of writing a dictionary. Sort of interesting. Not what I will be doing. The wall dictionaries, a traditionally arranged church, a room with space between the main door to the outside and the main door to the nave, etc., etc., etc. So, what I'll be doing for every entry in my dictionary is reading what I've typed up and coming up. There's the one out of Mencken, which provides a different perspective, saying it was used by catechumens, candidates for baptism, penitents, and women. And then my definition, or draft. Origin Greek, narthex, a small case. A room between the west end of the nave and the front door, common in early Christian churches, especially Byzantine ones, and in Gothic churches. In early churches, the purpose of the narthex was to allow those not eligible for admittance into the general congregation, particularly catechumens, candidates for baptism and repentance, to hear and partake in the service. A baptismal font was often placed in the narthex so that infants or adults could be baptized there before entering the nave for the first time, and to remind other believers of their baptism as they gathered to worship. Today, all people can enter the nave, and that's been the case for hundreds of years. And the narthex is often used as a cloakroom or as a buffer between the noise of the street and the nave. In many churches, the narthex is not really used as much because of the advent of the car. For example, the Cathedral Church of St. Paul, the door off of Woodward, there's a narthex between the front door and the door to the nave, but everybody parks behind the building and walks in those doors. So very few people actually know what a narthex is, and before the last dean, it was actually used as a storage room. So some of the theology might not be gotten. So this is what I'll be doing for all 1,700 entries. And then I'll be having people comment on these. All right, step 3, images. Identifying terms needing an image as I define them. Find some volunteer photographers, maybe put an ad in Living Church, a magazine of the church, and have people, well, here's our pictures of the chalice from our church. So that will, anything I get, I'll need some kind of copyright releases on, and there's some legal details about that. Pronunciation guides, I talked about before. There's various ones out there. You can read this if you're really interested. Some of them are quite fascinating. International Phonetic Alphabet, Pronunciation Guide from English Dictionary, the Oxford English Dictionary, the Merriam-Webster. So I'll have to stumble on one of these. There's also an American one that's different from the international one. And then I'm going to have to find a volunteer or two to take every term, look it up, and probably either the Oxford English Dictionary or something, and copy out what they've done. And I've talked to a couple of people about what it is, a violation of copyright, and they said, well, that's an idea, so it's not copyrightable. I'm gonna need to follow up on that before I end up in trouble. Written and audio pronunciation. So somebody's gonna have to actually sit down and say, Bishop, next word, and so on. Probably always wait files. Not difficult to do. Shooting the videos, we'll have to decide which things are really gonna get videos. Those are just some ideas right now. I'm waiting not putting these on YouTube. Google is always changing how YouTube works and what they do with their permissions. You put something up, you can never get it off of there. I'm not a big fan of that. Those of you who know me well know I'm especially not a big fan of Google on a good day. So these will probably reside on my own web server. 6, create the dictionary. As I said before, steps 2 through 5 occur simultaneously. To produce ebooks before, I've used a program called Smashword. There's one of the ones out there. You basically upload a Word file and mark it up. And then you upload it to their server, they do a whole bunch of stuff, and they give you an EPUB file, free of charge. And you can sell it on their site. I may do this through the lexicon software. I may just build a MySQL database and a PHP web system to just give me total control. That would be a lot more work. Interesting, but more work. Hard copy book, as I said before, you can produce on demand using Lua or Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Time frame. I'm aiming for a draft by the end of 2016, and by a draft I mean all the definitions, images, pronunciation guide. The videos may come later, with the final product in 2017 when I turn 50. So I thought that was sort of a nice goal. For my 50th birthday, I'd give everybody a dictionary, or send them a hyperlink to a dictionary. All right, lessons learned. Typing the terms in is a lot more work than I thought. This took a lot longer than it probably should have. If I'd actually done 2 or 3 hours a day, this could have been done a lot faster. It's a lot more work, more tedious than one might think to do. I probably should have already established a working group earlier in the project, a subject matter specialist, and people to take pictures of things. I probably should have had a lot of this already done. If you were writing a dictionary, or compiling a dictionary, I would strongly suggest you sit down and build a committee early on who can help you talk about things like word order, which pronunciation guide. Do we need a pronunciation guide? Maybe there's a reason all of these existing dictionaries don't have one. I don't really know why they don't. Maybe it's just not worth the work. I don't know. It'd be interesting to write these people and ask, you've done 5 editions, have you ever thought of a pronunciation guide? And why not? Just out of curiosity. So I probably should have started working on some of this at the same time. That's where we are now. Questions?
First of all, thank you.
Trevor, what do you think the real future of print dictionaries is?
As a librarian, I'm a firm believer that print is never going to go away. 100 years from now, 20 years from now, it's hard to say. There's a lot of advantages to electronic dictionaries. You've got it, especially with the Wi-Fi and the internet and apps, you've got it everywhere. You've got it on your phone, you've got it on your computer, you've got it on your iPad, other Windows tablets, Android tablets, etc. I don't think print ones are going to go away totally. It's easier to put images in them. It's easier to do tables and graphs. On an e-reader, unless you've got a color one, images aren't quite as crisp. I haven't worked with a modern, like a new Kindle recently. Does anybody have one? And how do they handle images on them? Are they easy to see?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, they're just like it's picture
Okay.
photo quality.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're to that point for e-readers. I think print ones will still be there, but I think a lot of them are going to be good. I can't see it ever just being print anymore. I think you're always going to have an electronic version, if that's what you're getting at. Will we only have an electronic version? Quite possibly. I mean, the main focus of my product is to make an e-dictionary. We're going to have a paper one in case you want to print it off and carry it around, but I see the focus is moving towards electronic, definitely. Other questions? John?
Just a personal comment. My problem with the e-books in general, as much as I have them on my iPad, is that what happens when the power goes down or things go off.
Yes.
I think print's going to be around. I agree with you for quite some time. But I have a question, since you were talking about images. What is the symbol of this that you use prominently?
Yes. This symbol in the upper corner, I should have told people what that was, I'm sorry. That is the shield of the Episcopal Church. It's using the colors of the country, red, white, and blue. The red cross is the cross of St. George, the patron saint of England, reflecting this is coming out of the Church of England. The little cross is up here. You see these sometimes as an X. The cross of St. Andrew, reflecting the fact that, without getting into a lot of history, after the revolution or the unfortunate incident, depending on one's point of view, clergy, Church of England, former Church of England clergy go off to England to be made bishops by the Church of England and the crown, which requires an oath of loyalty to the king, which is perhaps a problem for them. So they don't become bishops. They go up to Scotland. The Church of Scotland is a little unhappy at the time with the Church of England and goes, we'll make you bishops. And they become bishops, and they eventually go back to England and get made bishops by the Church of England as well, without the oath of loyalty to the crown after a few more years. So the crosses represent the St. Andrew, the patron saint of the Church of Scotland. The number of them is the number of founding churches or dioceses in the former colonies, now the United States of America, who established the Episcopal Church. So you will see this shield on this Episcopal flag it's on, but yeah, I should have said what that was, I'm sorry.
One other related question. You mentioned in your presentation there, listing of this for other Anglican churches other than Episcopal. What are other Anglican churches?
The Anglican Church of Canada, the Church of England, there's an Anglican Church in Australia, New Zealand. Name a country that was a former colony and it has an Anglican church. There's dozens, and I don't know the total number. Does anybody offhand?
Well, they would be arranged by provinces, and I don't remember the total number of provinces right now because it frankly is it's a dynamic number. But it would, as a whole, the Anglican Communion would be the third largest aggregate body of Christians in the world.
So, obviously, this is an English-speaking market as well. Although, because it's electronic, you could throw on a widget from Bing, from Microsoft, and it would do an automatic translation. The quality of that is not as good as a human translation. It's not bad. It's getting better. And Google also does it as well, actually. So it will be available in other languages on the website because you can just translate it upon demand. Other questions?
How is this going to be organized in a bit? My wife serves on the Altar Guild. Of course, there are these the different things that the priest has to wear and the things that go on the altar. These very strange names. And
Yes.
I would be very happy to get a dictionary to explain it. But are you going to have it organized into say, processes. It's not going to be mainly a nominal dictionary. It's going to have verbs and processes and so on. Or is it going to be organized in terms of the parts of the worship, parts of the church? Are there going to be an organizing?
There is. I mentioned briefly that I'm assigning each term or an entry to a main subject. So, in the as a librarian, when I'm looking at all these words, I'm coming up with subject categories in my head. So, music's an obvious one. Things to do with the Eucharist is an obvious one. Clothing or vestments. So you'll be able to, in the electronic version, browse A to Z, or put in a word and search for what a priest said he spilled coffee on his alb. What's an alb? He's got so many things he or she wears. You can search for that individual word, or you can search by broad subject. So you'll be able to say, show me all the words with the subject vestment, and out there will come organized A to Z, or A to Z, with pictures and a video. Architectural things. I've been labeling church architecture. So everything from the narthex to altar to table. And what's the difference between an altar and a table? Theologically speaking. Stained glass windows, crosses, the Great Crossing at the church. All of those things would fall into church architecture. So in the print version, it will come out A to Z. I'm thinking you will be able to print off just the music or just a particular category you're interested in. So there'll be subsections for the print version. So you may not want to download, you can download the entire thing, you can order the entire thing as a print version, or you can just order specific sections. So if you're a choir master, if you want the print version for your choir members, you could just say, I just want the words you've identified for music. So the answer to your question is, the electronic version is searchable by keyword, but also by subject. So if somebody's on the altar guild, and they want to know all the words that might be useful to them, that will be in there. And that's partly why I'm going to be meeting with subject matter specialists and going, okay, altar guild director, what are all the words that you use that I may have in here, but I may not have marked for altar guild? That's not a subject I've thought of. So there is going to be a fair amount of meeting with people in the governing structure of a church and who do things from volunteer to paid and go, here are the definitions I've come up with for your area. Did I leave anything out? What do you think of the definitions? Can you think of some pictures? So hopefully that will be of use to people, for volunteers, both in and outside of the church. Does that answer your question?
Also, most of the time you're talking about nouns, nominals.
Yes.
But the church involves processes.
Yes. So for example, something like conducting the Eucharistic service.
Yes.
So all the words of all the things they're holding or saying or doing, the theological terms associated with that, will all be in there under the broad subject Eucharistic service. And then maybe with a video, something called an instructed Eucharist, where you've got a priest actually conducting the Eucharist with all the people, helping him or her, and what they're doing might be of use to people. But yes, one of the things I'm not doing that most dictionaries do is say, what's the part of speech for this term? I'm not sure it's as relevant to this kind of subject dictionary. And in fact, all the dictionaries I've looked at, none of them have parts of speech. I'm not sure if that's true of most subject specialty dictionaries, and if it's a good thing or not.
Right. It is. And that's, I think, coming around to what I want. If you're going to use a dictionary, one of the things that the dictionary tells you is what word class it is. It is
Yes.
a verb or a noun.
Right.
So some of the more interesting things that might come out of it is that sometimes people ask, well, is this a sermon or a homily? I mean, what's the difference between a
Yes.
sermon and a homily?
Yes.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
That might be of interest.
I mean, and both words are in there, and they're cross-referenced, so people will know the difference. But I haven't been really focusing on parts of speech, and maybe I'll have to talk to some linguists and go, is that a weakness of subject dictionaries that we don't do that? Again, the ones I've looked at, nobody is all being
Because they're
definition.
mainly nominals.
Yes.
Mainly
Yeah.
nominals, just
Yeah.
nouns.
Yeah, so,
But the dictionary would include verbs and
Yes.
processes.
right, as well, yeah. Any other questions? Yes,
The narthex located west end,
yes.
is that particular to Anglican churches? And what-
Most Christian, virtually all Christian churches, the altar is at the east end of the church. Either physically is the eastern end of the church, where the sun rises, from a theological point of view, Jesus being resurrected and rising. So even if a church is not built with the altar at the geographic east, so even if the altar is at the north end, it's always called the east end. Most churches, the altar is at the east, and so the narthex is where the door to the sanctuary or the nave is by definition at the west. That's a very ancient tradition. Like I said, there are some churches where that's not the case, but theologically, the altar is always at the east, even if it's not from a geographic point of view. So yes, and that's true of most traditional churches. I can't speak to some of the more modern, non-denominational churches. That would be an interesting question, but most traditional denominations, I believe the altar's at the east and therefore the narthex is at the west. Do either?
Well, yeah, we refer to it as the
Yeah.
east end,
It's
the
liturgical east.
direction.
It's liturgical east no matter what, but there's an exception to it right on this campus, what you know is St. Andrew's Hall, former Episcopal church, and it runs on a north-south axis, it doesn't run on the east-west axis.
St. John's Royal Oak runs north-south.
Okay, but the altar's at the east.
But
Still called
inside the
east end.
building, you would still speak of it as liturgical east.
And I'm not sure if non-denominational churches follow that.
Many don't,
Non-liturgical church wouldn't,
they wouldn't care.
So Roman Catholic, Orthodox, Anglican, Lutheran, probably Methodist, United,
Not so much.
Presbyterian, I'm gonna guess that. It would be an interesting survey to find out. So, does that answer the question?
Yeah.
Is that standard to what would define a church as a church? I mean, you could say, well, what defines a church from a non-religious building? I mean, within the church complex. I mean, if the rectory is what I grew up, the rectory is over, I remember a rectory and a church, and then there was like a community building.
or parish hall or
A
something.
parish hall.
The church is typically gonna be where the worship takes place. Here, I mean, that's really the defining
So that's,
characteristic of that.
so it's the gathering place where the people pray.
Yeah.
It's not just where the service itself takes, I mean, you could have a service outside the church, but what makes the church is then that.
What makes a church is really the people. It has nothing to do with the building
I
actually.
guess, I'm referring to
The
this.
complex itself?
Yeah, or is it given a sacred rite that makes this a sacred place?
Yes,
Is what-
yes it is. There are rites of consecration, and in most traditions, some may call it dedication. But yes, but, I mean, we toss the word around a lot, and, you know, some could say, using the cathedral as an example in Cornwall, Warren, oh, there's the cathedral church over there. Well, it's multiple buildings. Only one part of those is the word, but people will refer to the whole thing as a church until you get inside it, or you get close to it, or you want to know where the big room is you pray in, or stuff like that. I pray in my office a lot, but
Well,
that's a different subject.
I guess I'm just thinking of the main consecrated room that, you know, ritually designed for it. That's what I'm shaking now.
Yeah. The church, or possibly the nave is another way to address it. Referring to it as the sanctuary is actually inaccurate. In the liturgical tradition, the sanctuary is everything that is past the altar rail, east of the altar rail. Kind of equivalent to the Holy of Holies within the old synagogue construct.
Well, thank you for coming. If there's questions, I can stay for a few minutes, but I'm trying to be conscious of our time. If people want a copy of the slides, email me, Trevor@wayne.edu. If you want a copy of the dictionary, check back in a couple of years.